stop slipping and stop cutting your socks. We have 15 different color options between 3 grip socks and 2 sleeve types. Something for everybody at a price that just makes sense. Available now at puregripsocks.com.
Regular viewers of the channel know that I have often been critical of Adidas takedown models, many of which suffer from the same issues. They tend to have a very shallow and sometimes even narrow shape to them. The sole plate design can often be awkwardly stiff or at least flex in weird points, and also the final construction of the boots often seems like it was made to be heavier just for the sake of separating itself further away from the more expensive elite models. These, however, don't suffer from most of those issues. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to the brand new Adidas Copa Pure 3 Pro, the first takedown model in the new Pure 3 lineup that, as you can see, looks very similar to that of the Elite. However, unlike the Elites that cost $250, these retail for $140, which is by no means inexpensive, but as far as first tier takedown models go, it's actually on the lower end of the scale. But it's one thing to look similar to the Elites because we see that with the F50 and the Predator at the pro tier as well. It's another thing entirely to feel like the Elites, and out of all the pro tier takedown models from Adidas, these definitely come the closest to the much more expensive top-end version, which is exactly what we're going to discuss in today's video, the good and the bad of the Pure 3 Pro and why they might just be the best value for money option of all the current Adidas takedowns. So if you're interested in learning more, including how they fit and feel on feet, please stick around, watch the entire review, and if you are interested in a pair for yourself, you can pick them up below their normal retail price by way of some exclusive SR4U coupon codes via the first link down below. And as always, if you guys enjoy the unsponsored, brutally honest reviews on this channel, don't forget to drop a like on the video and make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already so you don't miss out on my reviews of all the latest football boots of 2025. So first things first, here's a look at the Pure 3 Pro next to the Pure 3 Elite, where other than some very subtle detailing on the upper and the slight color difference on the sole plate, from a distance, you would not be able to tell these two boots apart. They look incredibly similar to each other, despite the Pros being $110 less expensive. Having said that, like most takedown models from just about any brand, upon closer inspection, it's very evident that the overall build quality isn't quite to the same standard as the top-end Elites, but this is pretty much, again, the case with just about every football boot brand. You do, to a certain extent, get what you pay for in terms of build quality and overall finishing with a top-end product. Having said that, the finishing has absolutely nothing to do with the way that a pair of football boots fits, feels, and performs. And in the case of the Copa Pure 3 Pro, other than maybe some minor differences with the sole plate, these feel and perform almost identically to that of the Elites. However, in making that statement, I do want to clarify that as good as I think the Pure 3 Pro is for the money that they're charging, I do think the Elite is the better football boot, and we'll go over some of those reasons throughout the video. However, the separation between Pro and Elite isn't as significant as we've seen with other Adidas takedown models, where if this is 100% in terms of what you should expect from this style of football boot, the Pure 3 Pro is maybe 90% of the same experience, which for nearly half the price is pretty good. With the Pros, just like the Elites, featuring a fusion skin upper, which combines really soft leather in the forefoot and toe box area that fuses pretty well seamlessly into a synthetic kind of mesh-based material through the midfoot with a central lacing system holding everything together. The end result is an incredibly soft feel on foot and a really nice touch on the ball, where of course you do get that natural leather material that I believe is calf skin. They haven't actually specified in the tech specs, but we know for a fact it's not kangaroo leather, and if it's not that, it's more than likely calf skin. It's on the more padded side as far as what we see from a lot of other football boots these days, but not overly so. So it's soft, it's pliable, and it gives you that nice, slightly cushioned touch on the ball that only leather can provide. And even through the midfoot, even though it's not leather, it's just incredibly soft and pliable, and it makes for a very consistent touch across the entire foot. I've made comparisons with the Copa Pure 3 Elite to that of the Nike Tiempo Legend 9 Elite, which of course is the previous generation Tiempo that a lot of people, including myself, really liked. This kind of feels like a little bit of a reincarnation of that boot, but maybe a little bit more streamlined in that this doesn't have the memory foam inserts that those Tiempos had. With realistically the highlight of this football boot definitely being the upper, that I think strikes a really nice balance of giving you that old school softness without feeling old school bulky. It does have more padding than the average football boot, but it does not feel clunky or cumbersome on your feet in any way whatsoever. As far as additional grip is concerned, the leather for the most part has been left relatively smooth. They do talk about 3D haptic texturing within the Adidas stripes, and you can see it very subtly here on the edges of the forefoot, but it's such a small amount of texturing that it pretty much doesn't do anything, meaning that as far as extra grip is concerned, there really isn't much to be had here. This, for the most part, has that traditional smooth leather feel on the ball, which again, I don't think is a bad thing whatsoever. And then to give this, again, a little bit more of kind of a modern type of feel, the boot maintains what is a traditional U-throat construction with this big cutout through the middle of the upper, but instead of a standalone tongue, you get prime knit that's fully elasticated, kind of attached on either side just below where the lace holes are positioned to give you what is kind of a one-piece upper construction, but one that's still, again, feels slightly more traditional. Something that I also really like about this boot design is that nice deep central lacing system, allowing for fantastic adjustability, where despite this upper looking like it's entirely made out of leather and honestly feeling like that as well, because it is actually synthetic through the midfoot, this area of the upper isn't going to stretch quite as much. It's going to hold a little bit more structure, and when paired up with this deep lacing system, you just have that ability to hold your foot in place in a way that feels secure, but also incredibly comfortable. Great adjustability is something that I really like about this design. And even just like the Elites, they give you that extra lacing position that's a little bit behind the top lace hole and slightly lower as well, where if you are finding that your heel isn't quite as secure as you would like it to be, you can utilize that extra anchor to help hold your heel down and push it down and back inside of the football boot, hopefully alleviating any issues that you have with heel lockdown, where for me personally, I didn't feel the need to use it, but depending on the shape of your feet and just how the boots fit you specifically, it's nice that they include that. Moving to the rear, you'll find that the heel area looks very similar to that of the Elites, despite the finishing not being quite as premium, I guess for lack of a better word. It's a low cut design where you do have that internal plastic heel counter that's maybe a little bit bigger and more structured on the Pro than it is on the Elites, but the difference when you're wearing the boots, I would say, is pretty minimal. And then the heel liner is that soft microfiber material with kind of targeted padding. It's just not as prominent as you'll find on the Elites, but still very similar in terms of feel and very effective in terms of how it locks your heel in place. I find this to be one of the more comfortable heel constructions currently on the market. And the fact that I can say that about a Pro model just as I can about the Elites is something that I have very rarely, if ever, been able to say about an Adidas takedown model. And then the insole, fully removable, I'll give you guys a quick look at that. It features a pretty standard mesh liner on the surface, and surprise, surprise, pretty well the exact same construction as the Elites. Unheard of for an Adidas takedown. It is two different types of ortholite foam, a softer, more spongy blue material for the majority of the insole, and then some firmer red inserts under the heel, as well as the forefoot. Which brings us to the base of the boot, where you will find what looks like the new comfort frame that you get on the Elites, but what at the end of the day is a little bit different in terms of the types of plastics used. However, as far as, again, takedown model Adidas boots go, this is the best sole plate in terms of being the closest in feel to that of the top end model, where very often we end up with these takedown model sole plates that are awkwardly stiff and just generally don't feel all that great for what the cost of the boot is. This, like I said, comes very close to that of the top end model, both in terms of flexibility as well as just general feel on feet as well. And then of course you do get that FG stud pattern that does carry over directly from the Elite model, new for the Copa Pure 3. It's a majority of conical studs with some blades at the base of the forefoot. All in all though, really good in terms of traction, definitely geared towards being slightly more traditional with the rounded stud shape, allowing for that freedom to twist and pivot when your foot is planted, but don't let the more old school design and looks fool you. This still provides really solid traction on firm natural grass and is overall very well suited for this style of football boot. Which brings us to the weight of the Copa Pure 3 Pro, which also might just be the most disappointing aspect of this football boot. We're using a scale because the scale never lies. We're going to see what the Pure 3 Pro weighs compared to the top end Elite, because there is a pretty significant difference. Using a scale both in the same size 9.5 US, we'll start off with that top end Elite model, and you can see that they weigh in at a very lightweight 7.5 ounces, the equivalent of 213 grams. Remember those numbers, and we'll throw on the Copa Pure 3 Pro, and you can see that they weigh in at 9.45 ounces, the equivalent of 268 grams. Which, for those doing the math at home, is a weight difference of almost 2 ounces or 55 grams exactly, which is quite a bit when you consider that these two boots feature uppers that are very similar to each other in terms of feel, where kind of like I talked about at the start of the video, it really seems like in the case of the Pure 3 Pro, Adidas have made them heavier just for the sake of adding a little bit of separation between the less expensive Pro and the more expensive Elite. Long story short, the Elites are very light and the Pros are not. On feet, there's not too much to say about the Copa Pure 3 Pro other than the fact that they are extremely comfortable. This leather fusion skin upper is so soft, is so flexible. The sole plate has nice flexibility to it as well, and the overall shaping I think they've absolutely nailed. Of course, with Adidas takedown models, there's always the question of the shallow fit, particularly through the heel, and it's definitely noticeable that the Pro is slightly more shallow than that of the Elite, but it's a very minor difference, and honestly, once you get used to them after about 5 minutes or so, it's something that you stop noticing entirely. The lockdown and quality of fit, I think, is top notch, especially for the $140 asking price that Adidas is asking. So as far as breaking the streak of poor fitting takedown models in the Copa series, I think they've done a very good job with this one. No major complaints from me whatsoever. From a width perspective, they have decent width to them, where I think these are going to be suitable for the vast majority of people. If you had super wide feet, they're definitely a little bit snug through the midfoot, but everywhere else they have some decent width, and certainly with that leather in the forefoot and toe box area, you are going to get that little bit of stretch as you wear them in. And as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, and the fit and the length is perfect. So if you are looking to get a pair for yourself, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. All in all though, if comfort and soft leather feel is a priority for you, for the money, you're not going to find too many options better than this. Also, I had the laces tucked, but untucked, they are incredibly long for some reason. So in conclusion, as long as you don't mind a little bit of extra weight, I really do think that the Copa Pure 3 Pro is the best of all the Pro tier takedown models from the Adidas brand. While the shaping is that little bit different from the Elites, from a feel and experience perspective, the Pro is almost identical when it comes to touch on the ball. The sole plate, like I said, feels pretty similar, and the stud pattern is in fact identical. It's just that little bit of extra weight that I think really separates the Pros from the Elites. So at the end of the day, it's very much a matter of what you're looking for and what you're willing to pay for. But if you're after a really solid pair of leather football boots that still have that little bit of padding to them for $140 or less with a coupon code, I really think the Copa Pure 3 Pro is a very solid takedown model option.